Welcome back to the Health Revival Show. We're going to nerd out today on some peptides and growth hormone and try to bring some sciencey information to you in more of a layman's term. But here's the thing. We have to say, number one, this is not medical advice.
Nope.
Number two, we believe that you should do your due diligence in educating yourself on peptides, how to use peptides and cycle them before you just go putting all these things in, because we know some people who've come to us after and said, yeah, I got really tired and exhausted because I was like overdoing it with different peptides. Or, yeah, I was getting like water retention and like my sleep was really interrupted and my HRV was tanking. And so, as we kind of go through this today, remember that peptides are really, really cool. They're also really powerful. And so, they are strong chemical messengers and signalers. And so, as we utilize these tools, we want to do it in the right season. And what we're going to talk today about is growth hormone secretagogues and analogs, and when you might use these and how cool they can be for helping support growing muscle, right? Putting on muscle mass and things like that. So this is the growth hormone system, I think, is one of the most misunderstood, but really
Yeah.
game-changing systems in the body. And a lot of people, when they hear growth hormone, they're going to think like big bodybuilders, these are steroids. I don't want to get jacked, right? Or some of you understand that that's not all they do and that there's a lot of anti-aging benefits here. But if we can turn on the growth hormones, in a clean, natural way without a bunch of synthetics and steroids, we can use peptides. That's what we're going to talk about today because it'd be really, really cool. So we've got growth hormone secretagogues, things like Ipamorelin. Then we have growth hormone releasing hormone analogs. GHRH is what you'll kind of see those referred to. And that's going to be things like CJC and Tesamorelin. And so this really just helps stimulate the natural release of growth hormone in your body. It's sending that signal. And so your body still has to go through the process of producing growth hormone and creating it. So this is a bit different than someone taking actual growth hormone. Okay. So these are peptides that are saying, hey, we need more growth hormone because it's time to grow, it's time to recovery, it's time to repair without forcing it or just completely replacing it. And so hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll understand what these things are. We're going to start with the basics. We're going to talk through some of the most popular ones. And then we're also going to talk about how they can support other things like fat loss, recovery, as well as some precautions and some considerations. And maybe, all right, if you're dealing with water retention, you're waking up puffy, your ankles or your wrists are really swollen, or you can't get your rings off, and maybe you're even dragging throughout the day, no matter how much water you drink, there's actually a good chance that you're not actually hydrating properly.
Exactly. Because water alone is not enough. You need electrolytes. You need sodium, potassium, magnesium, because those things actually pull water into your cells. Otherwise, you're basically just flushing it out and wondering why you're still tired, you're still bloated, and you're still sluggish.
But here's the thing, most electrolyte supplements out there aren't helping you in any way because a lot of them contain things like natural flavors, food dyes, and maltodextrin, which can irritate your gut. And these things can also spike your blood sugar when you're trying to heal.
That's why we both started using Buoy. It's super simple, just trace minerals and electrolytes in liquid form. No flavors, no colors, no sugar, no sweeteners, and you squeeze it into whatever you are drinking. Water, coffee, tea, smoothies, you name it.
And it's clinically backed by science too. So studies have shown that Buoy helps you hydrate better, 64% better in fact, and that's data coming from key blood and urinary markers, not just marketing fluff. And honestly, you can feel the difference. I've had many clients tell me their digestion's improved, they have less headaches, and they're better energy throughout the day.
And Buoy isn't just for people that go to the gym all the time and sweat a bunch. They actually offer a 35% lifetime discount for anyone that's struggling with chronic illnesses. Things like POTS, Hashimoto's, Crohn's disease, chronic migraines, and every autoimmune condition. They're really committed to making better hydration accessible to people who need it most.
I actually throw it in my coffee every morning because it's such an easy upgrade. You don't even taste it, but you're definitely gonna notice if you miss it.
If you're tired of playing hydration roulette and want something that actually supports your body, you've got to try Buoy. It's honestly one of the simplest ways to feel better, faster.
Groups of individuals that shouldn't put these in until they've done some underlying work.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start kind of with a little bit of the basics, growth hormone and sleep, because this is one of the main areas that it can really benefit people or it can disrupt. And depending on the person that this goes into, that is where you get to figure out what it's going to turn into for you. So your body naturally pulses growth hormone in a rhythm. And your biggest growth hormone pulse hits at night during sleep, technically deep, slow wave sleep. So, this was shown back in 1991. There was something in the Journal of Clinical Investigation. When sleep gets disrupted, your growth hormone rhythm and insulin regulation both kind of go sideways. So, already, sleep is the foundation. If you don't sleep, you don't recover. And if you don't recover, no peptide is going to save you. Okay. But we do see that in particular, growth hormone pulses specifically highest at night. And then these peptides that kind of flip on this growth hormone switch, specifically growth hormone secretagogues like ipamorelin, act like ghrelin. So ghrelin is your hunger hormone, but they act like that in kind of a very specific targeted way. So think of ghrelin as the doorbell that tells your pituitary to release growth hormone. Ipamorelin rings that bell without setting off the fire alarm. So most older peptides, there's a lot of older like GH peptides, GHRP6, they came with a lot more side effects. So like more cortisol issues, more prolactin jumps, more water retention. But in 1998, this ipamorelin was the first selective secretagogue. So it increased at GH without raising ACTH or cortisol. ACTH can cause a lot of water retention for women specifically, but that's what makes it so clean. So when you combine ipamorelin with something like a CJC, which is the GHRH analog, that's where some of the real magic can start to happen. So one flips the switch, the other turns up the volume. Okay, so ipamorelin flips the switch, CJC turns up the volume, and it creates kind of this bigger, cleaner GH pulse than either of them alone do. And that translates into visible, more long term changes. So a lot of the things that people take these for, number one is fat loss, specifically in the midsection area. It boosts lipolysis, so your body starts mobilizing stored fat energy. Um, and especially when you are fasted, this seems to work very well. And then lean muscle prevention. So, growth hormone obviously is going to help you maintain and build more muscle while cutting fat without spiking insulin and cortisol. So, that is kind of the big beauty of these things is that they don't really stress the body out, but they help clean builds happen a lot easier.
Mhm.
Deeper sleep, better hair, skin, and nails, because again, guess what collagen comes from? Growth hormone has to stimulate those things. So more elasticity, fewer wrinkles, sharper focus and mood, joint and tendon repair, and then energy and metabolism because it increases mitochondrial function, more energy, steadier blood sugar, better vitality. So they do a lot. They're really cool. They're
Mhm.
really great peptides. But again, like nothing comes without, you know.
Yeah. So as we kind of go into this, and most people will be using like Tesamorelin or they're going to do Ipamorelin with CJC. I have done Ipamorelin, but I did it without CJC because from what I've read and researched and what I've seen clinically, it's a better starting place if you've not ever done any growth hormone analogs or secretagogues because you're going to get a more natural, steady growth hormone pulse without overstimulating that hypothalamus and again, the pituitary. When you add the volumizer, right, CJC 1295, you amplify the pulse. And so that's great for recovery or again, anti aging goals. But if you're just starting out, doing that together, that combination together can actually be a bit strong for people who have like adrenal fatigue, thyroid or cortisol dysregulation, histamine sensitivity or migraines, and then also sleep disruption. And so both ipamorelin and CJC boost growth hormone just in different ways, as Becca was saying. And therefore, for me personally, if I was just starting out, I would do ipamorelin alone, see how your body responds. If I'm getting better sleep, if I'm having better recovery, better energy, and I'm not having a lot of water retention, then that would be great. You can always pull in CJC later or do that, the next time because I think some people just go out of the gates really fast. They're like, "Oh, I read about this or I heard about this and so I want to
I
add it
want to
all
lose
in now."
body. I want to lose belly fat.
Yes. And I mean, we get it, right? Like let's say you're using a GLP-1 and you're at a dose, you don't want to keep going up because it is cost,
Mhm.
like the more milligrams that you take per week of GLP-1s, the more. And I was talking to my brother about this because he was asking me like, "Hey, like where do you get yours and like how much is it?" And I'm like, "It's about $10 per milligram is kind of like the average cost that I'm seeing." When you're going with, prescription pharmaceuticals, they are going to increase your cost as you go up, right? So they have a titration schedule where these pens essentially are pre-made. And so you got 2.5, 5, 7.5, and there's nothing like in between. Like, what if the person doesn't need 2.5 jump, right? It's just that they're large jumps and then your cost is going up. So it can be very cost prohibitive for some people, even when it's covered under insurance. And so I was talking about on average, from a GLP-1 perspective, you're looking at like $10 per milligram. If you're going to go in and you're going to do other things to support this, midsection fat loss, like some of these growth hormones are like an AOD, 9604, like those can be a little bit more cost effective. And so that's just one thing here that we wanted to, say as well, because I think so many people will just go out the gates, go hard and fast. Remember that your body is still going to take time. If you're losing weight on a GLP-1 at about a pound per week, I think you're still in a good spot. 1 to 2 pounds per week. You want slow and steady. When you start dropping massive weight quickly, you're not just dropping weight, you are catabolizing muscle. And you're going to put a higher risk that you're going to start regaining this weight back. And so we always say minimal effective dose, low and slow with anything that you're doing, and then layer some of these, other things in. All right, so let's talk about fasting because that can support all of this and make this even stronger. Dr. Ho and his colleagues published a study in 1998 in the Journal of Clinical Investigation that fasting doesn't raise growth hormone. It amplifies the pulses. So bigger, stronger, and more frequent pulses because insulin and growth hormone are like opposing teammates. So when insulin is low, growth hormone goes up. That's why in fasted morning, that's why when we're looking at the growth hormone, the fasting morning dose is so effective. So you inject your peptide, you wait 20 to 30 minutes. Some people say even a little bit longer, maybe 45 minutes, and then you go and train. You're riding this natural growth hormone wave. Okay. But when you go to the other side of this and you're looking at the growth hormone releasing hormone analog, that's the volume knob. Again, this is turning up the knob on the entire system. And so they're not pushing growth hormone directly. They're making your pituitary more responsive to the natural growth hormone triggers. So that's where you're going to see the tesamorelin, sermorelin, CJC 1295. All of those are going to mimic your own hormone releasing hormone. And tesamorelin in particular has a lot of, clinical research behind it. That is the only growth hormone releasing hormone analog with FDA approval, tesamorelin. And technically for HIV associated lipodystrophy. So the metabolic benefits go far beyond just growth hormone here. So the studies have shown with tesamorelin, visceral fat reduction, better body composition, improved metabolic health, again, because you're improving insulin sensitivity and glucose control, muscle density and strength, cognitive protection. Some studies show that improved cognition in older adults and those with metabolic dysfunction. Everything I think we've talked about lately comes back to type 3 diabetes. When we think Alzheimer's, we think dementia, forgetfulness, right? A lot of this diabetes that we're seeing, chronically elevated insulin leads to chronically elevated blood sugars, right? Which just stresses out the system. And a lot of this can do a lot of damage for the brain. And so when we think about anything that we're doing with peptides or just anything lifestyle wise, right, to control your blood sugars, that's going to improve your cognitive abilities. I always think about people who, really came from a poor diet, a standard American diet, and they went into like a keto state. And maybe at first it's really challenging to get your body to get into this fat burning, right? And get your ketones up. But once they get there, they're like, man, I feel really good. I feel mentally clear. I feel mentally sharp. I'm noticing so much more improvement in my ability to focus and to stay on task and to be productive. And a lot of that is because their body's no longer dealing with chronically elevated blood sugars or riding big, waves. Anyways, other benefits here that I just want to wrap this up with for tesamorelin. Again, as Becca talked about earlier, anything you're doing with enhancing natural growth hormone pulses can support sleep. And then also cardiometabolic support. So lowering inflammation, improving your lipid profile. So if you have a high, LDL, high cholesterol, things like that, all of this is going to reduce inflammatory markers linked to belly fat. So everything that basically we come down to in every episode is what? It's inflammation, right? Where's that inflammation coming from and how do we improve that? And then we're going to see this improve your liver fat and have better insulin communication and sensitivity long-term.
So kind of just wrapping up the benefits and how they work. Your body pulses GH, growth hormone, mostly at night. So you can dose at bedtime. We talked about sometimes dosing first thing in the morning, but you need to be dosing away from food so that it has better absorption abilities. And you also want to be dosing ideally If you're trying to get better recovery, tissue repair, muscle growth, that might be at night. But if your goal is fat loss, fasted morning injections before cardio seem to be the gold ticket. Caffeine is this caveat. Okay. So it showed that caffeine cut the gluten growth hormone spike from exercise in half because caffeine raises free fatty acids in the blood, which tells your body we've got no fuel, no need for growth hormone. So if you're taking peptides fasted, you have to skip the pre workout or time it right. Inject first, wait 15 to 20 minutes, then have your coffee. Okay. So if the goal is fat loss, typically Ipamorelin, CJC fasted in the morning, wait 20 to 30 minutes, then cardio, minimal caffeine. If your goal is recovery and muscle, bedtime dosing seems to work better. It augments your body's natural deep sleep growth hormone surge. And if you want both, you can dual dose AM for fat loss, PM for recovery. Caffeine, you got to moderate. And remember, you can't out inject bad sleep, bad food, or chronic stress. So let's talk about where things can sometimes break down because, again, these are secretagogues. So they are ringing the doorbell telling your body, hey, I need you to go and make more growth hormone. But here's where the problem can start to arise. Certain people lack the biochemical or receptor efficiency to handle the stimulation that these peptides provide. So, one of the first things that can go wrong is the pituitary's growth hormone releasing hormone and receptors can become desensitized. So this can happen from chronic stress, this can happen from insulin resistance, this can happen from high cortisol or sleep deprivation. So when you push that CJC ipamorelin signal, it hits a wall. So growth hormone doesn't rise appropriately. But growth hormone releasing hormone and ghrelin-like signaling still affects the nervous system. And so this can cause actually worse sleep. So you can get sleep disruption. You can get sympathetic overdrive. So your HRV actually drops. You get the wired but tired feeling. You get weight gain or water retention because cortisol and insulin signaling goes wrong. If you have poor liver function, so if growth hormone is released, the liver has to convert it. You have to convert growth hormone to what is called IGF-1, which is the main anabolic mediator, the growth mediator. And that conversion depends on healthy hepatic function, aka your liver has to be in a healthy place, not dealing with stealth infections, not dealing with inflammation, not dealing with a ton of things it has to detox. It's not detoxing well. You have to add adequate nutrition, zinc, B vitamins, methionine, taurine. You have to have a balanced thyroid and insulin signaling. And if your liver or methylation detox pathways are sluggish, growth hormone gets released, but it's not converted. So you get all the stimulation, but none of the benefit. So the other thing that we sometimes see is actual genetic mutations can cause this. So COMT and MAO have a lot to do with catecholamine balance. Okay. So these peptides can alter your dopamine, your serotonin, and your ghrelin pathways. So when you have a slow COMT and a slow detoxification ability, you cannot clear catecholamines efficiently. So when you take these, you get more anxiety, you get insomnia, you get HRV crashes, you get wired energy, you get panic at night. So everything goes wrong, basically, because you are not breaking down and detoxifying, but you're getting all the stimulation, right? And then the mitochondria and hypothalamic stress. So if there's chronic inflammation, there's an infection, there's mold, all of these things are impairing your HPA axis signaling and your mitochondrial generation. These GH pulses are energy dependent, you guys. You need ATP. And if ATP is low, you will feel inflamed, you will feel fatigued instead of anabolic and growth stimulating. So there are some things that you have to consider, like if you have high cortisol, if you have low DHEA, if you have really low IGF-1 despite this use, if you have elevated liver enzymes or poor bile flow. We see that a lot with constipation. We see it a lot with SIBO. We see it a lot with people that deal with a ton of food sensitivity issues or bloating that happens all the time after heavy fatty meals, right? Methylation issues, inflammation or oxidative stress, and poor sleep architecture. Like, again, the foundations matter. We need to address the foundations before we go down the route of optimization. You cannot optimize a dysfunctional body. You have to get the body to a place that optimization with HRT, with peptides, which all of these things can be really beneficial. But if you are someone that is a total dumpster fire, do not expect peptides to come and save the day, especially ones like this. Like this is, you don't want growth hormone in a body that is extremely dysfunctional. This is for, okay, I feel really, really good. I want to take it to the next level.
Yeah, or I think about, I mean, me personally, okay, what are other things that you should do before considering this? Optimize your testosterone would be one thing for women,
Mhm.
right? So that's for me. I was doing Ipamorelin, and then I'm like, okay, I just need to not do this. I didn't have any negative reactions or anything with it. I actually felt pretty good on it. But I was like, I'm gonna work on optimizing my testosterone, and then if I still feel like I need some of this, then I'll come back to it. But I think that, like we've talked about here, low and slow is the name of the game. Like when you feel like you're in a good place, I would also, because we've seen multiple women now have responses that are more on that water retention. My HRV dropped. I'm not feeling good. I'm not sleeping well. Start slow, right? So if you're looking at like a peptide cheat sheet, or you're just doing your own research online and you're seeing, hey, this is the general recommendation to do, let's call it 250 micrograms or 500 micrograms or whatever, maybe you start with like half of that, or even less, and just kind of see, how does your body do with this and how do I feel? And then go up maybe to that full dose. And a lot of times they're going to be cycled on and off and things like that. So we just thought that we would share this episode because so many people ask us about these things. And again, they're really cool tools and they do a lot. The research is there to support. There's so many benefits of them. But at what time and place do you put them in, I think is really important. And then also what else you're doing with your peptides, right? Because again, we know shiny object syndrome. You get into peptides, you're like, man, this is so cool. There's a peptide for everything. I just want to take them all the time so I can just feel amazing and look like a model and all the things. But then you get into this place where we've talked about this in the past. You're overstimulating mitochondria, right? You're not detoxifying well. You're not dealing with a lot of these underlying foundational things that really need to be taken care of first. And then it's kind of backfiring on you. And you don't want to waste money, right? Because peptides are an investment. So if you like this episode, share it out, tag us, let us know. If you have any questions, you can always submit those and we will be happy to cover those on an upcoming podcast soon. And with that, we hope you have a great day. We will be back next week.